The wind on 7 always smelled like ash. Danny Cole had been on this planet for 3 months now, and he still was not used to it. The gray dust got into everything. His clothes, his food, his lungs. But he was a soldier, and soldiers did not complain. They just kept moving forward. Danny was a corporal in the United Earth Marine Corps, but his job was not to kill. His job was to save lives. He was a combat medic, trained to run toward danger while everyone else ran away. He carried a rifle like all the others, but his most important tools were the bandages, the medicines, and the steady hands that had pulled dozens of wounded soldiers back from the edge of death. Earth had not wanted this war. Humanity was still young among the stars, still learning the names of distant galaxies and the faces of alien races. But the Dominion had not cared about that. The creatures had attacked a human mining colony without warning, killing hundreds of innocent people. They had expected the soft, fragile humans to run away and hide. They had been wrong. Now humanity fought alongside the sovereignty, a race of tall, silver-skinned beings with eyes like polished mirrors and voices like music. They had been fighting for centuries. They were elegant and proud, ancient in ways humans could not understand. They had accepted Earth's help, but Danny could tell they did not truly respect his kind. To them, humans were like children playing at war. Danny did not mind. He was not here for respect. He was here to do his job. On the morning of the ambush, Danny's squad was patrolling Velar Ridge with a group of warriors. The ridge was a long stretch of rocky hills covered in that same gray ash. Below them, a valley twisted between the cliffs like a scar on the land. Sergeant Pete led the squad. He was a big man with a loud voice and a heart that never seemed to know fear. He walked at the front, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Stay sharp," Pete said through the radio. "Intel says there might be scouts in this area." Danny walked in the middle of the group, his medical pack heavy on his back. Around him, the warriors moved with a grace that made them look like they were dancing rather than walking. Their armor was beautiful, covered in swirling patterns that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Their weapons were long and curved, more like works of art than tools of war. One of them, a tall female with a particularly ornate set of armor, walked slightly apart from the others. Danny had noticed her before. She carried herself differently than the rest, with a quiet authority that made the other keep their distance. He had assumed she was some kind of officer. He had no idea how wrong he was. The attack came without warning. One moment, the valley was silent. The next, the air was filled with the screaming sound of plasma fire. Green bolts of energy rained down from the cliffs above, turning the rocks around them into clouds of burning dust. Danny threw himself behind a boulder as the world exploded into chaos. He heard Pete shouting orders, heard the sharp crack of human rifles answering the attack, but he also heard screams. Screams. Human screams. The ambush had been perfectly planned. They had hidden themselves in tunnels carved into the cliffs, waiting until the patrol was completely surrounded. Now they poured out like insects from a broken nest, their armored bodies gleaming with a sickly green light. Danny peeked out from behind his boulder and saw the battle unfolding. The warriors were fighting bravely, their curved blades flashing as they cut down those that got too close. But there were too many enemies. One by one, the silver-skinned warriors began to fall. He saw Pete take a hit to the shoulder and go down. Danny started to move toward him, but another medic, a young woman named Price, got there first. She dragged Pete behind cover and started working on his wound. Danny nodded at her and turned to look for other wounded. That was when he saw her. The female with the ornate armor was lying on the ground about 30 meters away. She was trying to crawl toward a large boulder, but she was leaving a trail of glowing blue liquid behind her. Blood. Blood. Danny did not think. He did not calculate the odds or consider the danger. He simply moved. He ran. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air around him. He felt the heat of one pass so close to his face that it burned his cheek. But he did not stop. He could not stop. There was a wounded person ahead of him, and that was the only thing that mattered. He slid to a stop beside the woman and immediately saw how bad it was. A piece of shrapnel had torn through her armor and cut deep into her abdomen. The wound was wide and ugly, and that strange blue blood was pouring out of it at an alarming rate. "Hold on," Danny said, not knowing if she could understand him. "I am going to help you." The woman looked up at him. Her silver eyes were wide, but not with fear. She seemed confused, as if she could not understand why this human was here, why he had risked his life to reach her. Danny did not have time to explain. He pulled open his medical pack and started working. The problem was obvious. His supplies were designed for humans, not. He had studied their biology, read every file he could find, but theory and practice were very different things. He did not know if his medicines would help her or hurt her. But he had to try. He grabbed a tube of coagulant gel, the same stuff he used to stop bleeding in human wounds. Pure, it might be too strong for tissue. He quickly mixed it with saline solution, diluting it to what he hoped was a safe concentration. "This might hurt," he warned her. He pressed the gel into her wound. The woman gasped. Her body went stiff. For one terrible moment, Danny thought he had made a mistake, thought he had killed her instead of saving her. Then the bleeding slowed. Danny let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. He wrapped the wound with emergency bandages, applying pressure to help the gel do its work. The blue blood stopped flowing. The woman was still alive. She whispered something in her own language. Danny caught only one word that he recognized from his studies. "Impossible." Above them, the battle raged on. But Danny stayed where he was, keeping pressure on the wound, protecting his patient with his own body. He did not know who she was. He did not know that he had just changed the course of history. All he knew was that she was hurt, and he had helped. That was enough. The battle lasted for another hour. Danny stayed with the wounded woman the entire time, keeping pressure on her wound, watching for any signs that she was getting worse. Plasma fire streaked overhead. Explosions shook the ground. The screams of the dying mixed with the roar of weapons. But Danny blocked it all out. His world had shrunk to this one patient, this one life that he was fighting to save. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes her silver eyes would open and fix on his face with that same confused expression. Once, she reached up and touched his cheek with cold fingers, as if she was trying to make sure he was real. "Stay with me," Danny told her each time. "Help is coming, just hold on." He did not know if she understood his words, but something in his voice seemed to reach her. She would nod slightly, then close her eyes again. Finally, the sound of human filled the air. Reinforcements had arrived. The seeing that they had lost the advantage of surprise began to retreat back into their tunnels. The battle was over. Danny heard footsteps approaching and looked up to see running toward him. Her uniform was covered in blood, both red and blue. "Danny, are you hit?" she asked. "I am fine, but she needs right now." Looked down at the woman and her eyes went wide. "Is that who I think it is?" Before Danny could ask what she meant, a group of warriors came rushing over. They moved with a speed and urgency that Danny had never seen from them before. When they saw the woman lying on the ground, several of them actually cried out in horror. One warrior, a male with deep scars across his face, dropped to his knees beside her. He touched her forehead gently, then looked up at Danny with eyes that burned with intensity. "Human," he said, his voice shaking, "what have you done?" Danny felt his heart sink. "I tried to save her. I stopped the bleeding. She was going to die." "You touched the Empress," another warrior said. "You put your human hands on the mother of our people." Danny felt the blood drain from his face. Empress. He had heard that word before. He knew what it meant. "I did not know," he said quietly. She was wounded. I am a medic. I help wounded people. That is all I know how to do. The warrior stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly his expression changed. The anger faded, replaced by something else, something that looked almost like wonder. You saved her, he said. You ran through enemy fire to reach her. You used your strange medicine to stop her bleeding when our own field healers could not. She was hurt, Danny repeated. It was the only explanation he had. The warrior stood up. He was tall, even for him, and he towered over Danny like a silver giant. I am commander, he said. I am the personal guard of Empress, High Queen of the Sovereignty. You have done what I and all my warriors failed to do. You have kept her alive. Danny did not know what to say. He had saved queens and emperors before in training simulations. But this was real. This was the leader of an entire alien civilization, and he had treated her like any other wounded soldier. Medical transports arrived moments later. They carefully lifted their empress onto a floating stretcher and carried her toward a waiting ship. Commander walked beside her, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Before they left, the commander turned back to Danny. You will come with us, human. The Empress will want to speak with you when she wakes. Danny looked around for Pete or for anyone from his squad. Pete was sitting on a rock, his shoulder wrapped in bandages, giving Danny a tired thumbs up. Go, Pete called out. That is an order, Corporal. Do not keep the Queen waiting. Danny nodded and followed them to their ship. The flight to the flagship took less than an hour. Danny spent most of it sitting in a corner, trying to process what had happened. Around him, warriors whispered to each other in their musical language. He caught some of them looking at him with expressions he could not read. Were they angry, grateful? He could not tell. The flagship was the most beautiful thing Danny had ever seen. It hung in orbit above Seven like a crystal palace floating among the stars. The hull seemed to be made of living light, shifting through soft colors as the ship moved. Inside, everything was smooth and flowing, designed with a grace that made human ships look like blocks of rough stone. Danny was led through long corridors to a medical bay where the Empress was being treated. Healers in white robes surrounded her, using devices that hummed with strange energy. One of them turned to look at Danny, then said something to Commander. The healer says your treatment saved her life, translated. If you had not stopped the bleeding when you did, she would have died before we could reach her. Danny felt a wave of relief wash over him. I am glad it worked. I was not sure it would. Studied him with those silver eyes. You were not sure. You risked your life to reach her, used medicine you did not know would work, and you were not sure. There was no time to be sure. She was dying. I had to try something. The commander was silent for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. Humans are strange creatures, he said. Your bodies are weak. Your lives are short. You have no natural armor, no special senses, nothing that should make you dangerous. And yet you do things like this. You run toward death instead of away from it. You gamble everything on hope and instinct. Danny shrugged. That is just how we are, I guess. It is terrifying, said. Then for the first time he smiled. And it is admirable. I begin to understand why they fear you. They waited together in silence. Hours passed. Finally, one of the healers approached and spoke to in rapid. The Empress is awake, said. She wants to see you. Danny took a deep breath. He had faced enemy fire, treated wounds that would make most people sick, and survived things that should have killed him a dozen times. But as he walked toward the room where the Empress waited, he felt more nervous than he had ever felt in his life. He was about to meet a queen, and he had no idea what she would say to the human who had saved her life. The room where the Empress rested was not like any hospital room Danny had ever seen. There were no machines beeping, no sterile white walls, no smell of antiseptic. Instead, the chamber was filled with soft golden light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls curved gently upward like the inside of a shell, covered in patterns that shifted and moved like living things. Empress sat on a bed that looked more like a throne. She wore simple white robes now, not the ornate armor from the battlefield. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the warm light, and her eyes followed Danny as he walked toward her. He stopped a few meters away and stood at attention, the way he would for any high-ranking officer. He was painfully aware of how out of place he looked. His uniform was still covered in blood and ash. His face was dirty. His hands were rough and human. "Corporal Danny Cole," the Empress said. Her voice was soft but clear, and she spoke English perfectly. "The human medic who saved my life." "Yes, ma'am," Danny said. He did not know what else to say. The Empress studied him for a long moment. Her silver eyes seemed to look right through him, seeing things that Danny could not imagine. "Come closer," she said finally. "I want to see the face of the man who ran through fire to reach me." Danny walked forward until he stood at the edge of her bed. Up close, the Empress was even more striking. Her features were sharp and elegant, beautiful in a way that was completely different from human beauty. She looked ancient and young at the same time, like a statue carved from moonlight. "You are wondering why I was on that battlefield," she said. "It was not a question." "The thought had crossed my mind, ma'am." The Empress smiled slightly. "I go where my soldiers go. I fight where they fight. A queen who hides behind walls while her people die is not a queen worth following." Danny nodded slowly. He understood that. He had known officers like that, leaders who believed in leading from the front. "Among my people," the Empress continued, "there is an ancient law. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt. This debt is sacred. It cannot be ignored or forgotten." "Ma'am, I was just doing my job. You do not owe me anything." The Empress tilted her head, studying him with curious eyes. "Your job. You say this as if it is simple, as if what you did was ordinary." "For a medic it is ordinary. We see someone hurt, we help them. That is all." "No," the Empress said firmly. "That is not all." She leaned forward slightly. "I saw you, Danny Cole. I was conscious for much of it. I saw you run through the plasma fire when everyone else was taking cover. I saw you drop beside me without hesitation. I watched your face as you worked on my wound." Danny felt uncomfortable under her intense gaze. "I just did what needed to be done." "You were not afraid." Danny thought about the question honestly. "I was terrified," he admitted. "But fear does not matter when someone needs help. You just push it aside and do what you have to do." The Empress was silent for a moment. Then she laughed softly. It was a beautiful sound, like silver bells ringing. "You are a strange creature, Danny Cole. Your species is strange. Your bodies are fragile. You are so short that by our standards you are barely more than children. You have no telepathy, no ancestral memory, no natural weapons. And yet—" She shook her head slowly, wonder in her eyes. "And yet you run toward danger instead of away from it. You gamble your short lives on hope and instinct. You feel fear but act anyway. My people have lived for thousands of years. We have conquered stars and built empires. But somewhere along the way, we forgot how to be brave the way you are brave." Danny did not know how to respond to that. He had never thought of himself as particularly brave. He was just a medic from a small colony in the Sol system. He had joined the military because he wanted to help people, not because he wanted to be a hero. "The debt I owe you is not a small thing," the Empress said. "You saved my life, yes, but you also showed my people something they needed to see. You showed them that courage is not about being strong or powerful. It is about choosing to act even when you are weak and afraid." "Ma'am, I really do not need any reward. Just knowing you are alive is enough." The Empress reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool and smooth, and her grip was surprisingly gentle. "It is not a reward," she said. "It is an honor, and it is something that was decided long before you or I were born. Among my people, when a life debt is owed, the debtor must find a way to repay it that is equal to what was given. You gave me my life. I must give you something of equal value." Danny frowned. What could possibly be equal to a life? "A purpose," the Empress said. "A place in history, a chance to change the fate of two civilizations." She released his hand and sat back against her pillows. "The alliance between Earth and the sovereignty has always been fragile," she said. "Many of my people do not trust humans. They see you as primitives, as children playing with weapons you do not understand. This attitude has weakened our alliance and made our war against the harder than it needs to be." Danny nodded. He had felt that distrust himself, seen it in the eyes of warriors who looked at human soldiers like they were insects. "But what you did on that battlefield has changed things," the Empress continued. "The story is already spreading. A lone human medic saved the Empress. He ran through fire to reach her. He used strange primitive medicine to do what our own healers could not. My people are asking questions now. They are wondering if perhaps they have misjudged your kind." "That is good, is it not?" "It is more than good. It is an opportunity." The Empress fixed him with her silver gaze. "I want you to become my voice to your people, Danny Cole. I want you to be the bridge between our two civilizations. I want you to show both sides what is possible when humans and work together." Danny felt his heart stop. "You want me to be, what exactly?" "An ambassador," the Empress said. "The first human to ever serve at the court. You will speak for your people and you will help my people understand that humanity is not a race of children. You are a race of warriors, of healers, of heroes." Danny opened his mouth to refuse. He was just a corporal. He had no training in diplomacy. He did not know the first thing about being an ambassador. But then he looked into the Empress's eyes and he saw something there. Hope, trust, a belief in him that he did not entirely understand. "I will try," he said finally. "I cannot promise I will be good at it, but I will try." The Empress smiled, and her smile was like the sun rising over a frozen world. "That is all I ask," she said. "That is all any of us can do, try and hope, and refuse to give up." Danny nodded slowly. He had come to Seven as a simple medic. Now he was about to become something else entirely. He just hoped he would not let her down. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Danny's life. He went from sleeping in a dusty barracks on a war-torn planet to living in a crystal palace among the stars. He traded his blood-stained uniform for flowing robes of blue and silver. He learned to walk the halls of power instead of the trenches of battle. It was not easy. Many of the still looked at him with suspicion. He was human after all, small, fragile, short-lived. What could such a creature possibly understand about their ancient civilization? But Empress had made her decision, and in the sovereignty, the word of the Empress was law. Danny spent his first month learning everything he could about culture. He studied their history, a story that stretched back over 10,000 years. He learned their language, struggling with sounds that human throats were never meant to make. He memorized the names of their noble houses, the rituals of their court, the subtle gestures that could mean the difference between respect and insult. Commander became his teacher. The warrior had been suspicious of Danny at first, but something had changed after the battle. Perhaps it was the way Danny had risked his life. Perhaps it was the fact that the Empress trusted him. Whatever the reason, now treated Danny with a respect that seemed almost like friendship. "You learn quickly for a human," said one day as they walked through the gardens of the palace. The gardens were filled with plants from 100 different worlds, flowers that glowed and trees that sang. "I have to," Danny replied. "I do not want to embarrass the Empress." Laughed. "You worry too much. The Empress sees something in you that most of my people cannot see. She believes you can change things." "What do you believe?" Was silent for a moment. "I believe that you are different from what I expected humans to be. When I first saw your kind, I thought you were like the brutal, savage, driven only by hunger and violence. And now I see that you are something else entirely. You have a fire in you that my people lost long ago, a willingness to risk everything for others, a refusal to accept defeat even when all hope seems lost. Looked at Danny with his silver eyes. It is both terrifying and inspiring. The story of Danny's rescue of the Empress spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every news channel carried the image of a small human medic running through plasma fire to save the Queen. People who had never cared about the war suddenly became interested. They wanted to know more about this strange species that produced such unexpected heroes. On Earth, Danny became famous overnight. His mother, a retired nurse living in a small house on the colony where he grew up, suddenly found herself surrounded by reporters wanting to know about her son. She told them that Danny had always been like this, always running toward trouble instead of away from it. She said she was proud of him, but she also worried. She knew her son. She knew that he would never stop putting himself in danger to help others. In the halls of the High Council, things were changing. High Commander Morin had been the loudest voice against the alliance with Earth. He was an ancient warrior, a hero of 100 battles, and he believed that humans were too primitive, too unpredictable to be trusted. But now Even was forced to reconsider his position. The humans saved her, he admitted during a council meeting, his voice bitter with reluctant respect. When our own guards failed, when our own healers could do nothing, a single human with his primitive tools succeeded. Perhaps there is something to these creatures after all. Empress stood before the council, her wound now fully healed, a faint scar the only reminder of that day on Velar Ridge. I have made a decision, she announced. The alliance between Earth and the sovereignty will no longer be a temporary military arrangement. It will become a full partnership. We will share technology. We will share knowledge. We will build a future together. The council chamber erupted in whispers. Some voices were shocked, others were angry, but none dared to openly oppose the Empress. Furthermore, continued, I am appointing Danny Cole as the first human ambassador to the throne. He will speak for his people in our court. He will be my personal advisor on all matters concerning humanity. Danny stood at the back of the chamber, feeling the weight of 1,000 silver eyes upon him. He kept his face calm, the way had taught him, but inside his heart was pounding. After the council meeting approached Danny. The old warrior was huge, even larger than, and his face was hard as stone. I do not trust you, human, said bluntly. I do not believe that your kind belongs among the stars. You are too young, too wild, too dangerous. Danny met his gaze steadily. Then why did you change your mind about the alliance? Was silent for a long moment. Because I saw something on the battlefield that I cannot explain. I saw one of your kind run toward death without hesitation. I saw him save our Empress when all of us had failed. I do not understand why he did it. I do not understand how he survived, but I cannot deny that it happened. Maybe that is the point, Danny said quietly. Maybe you are not supposed to understand us. Maybe you are just supposed to see what we can do when we decide that something matters. Stared at him. Then slowly the old warrior nodded. Perhaps you are right, human. Perhaps that is exactly the point. He turned to leave, then paused. The Empress believes in you. That is enough for me to watch and wait. Do not make her regret her faith. Danny nodded. I will do my best. Your best had better be extraordinary, said. Because they are coming. They know that the alliance is growing stronger. They will try to destroy it before it becomes unbreakable. And when they come, we will need every advantage we can get. As the old warrior walked away, Danny looked out the window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, they were planning their next move. Somewhere out there, a war was waiting to be won or lost. And somehow, a simple medic from a backwater colony had ended up at the center of it all. He thought about his mother, about his friends back home, about Pete, and in all the soldiers still fighting on 7. He thought about the Empress, who had placed so much trust in him. He thought about the future that was waiting to be built. Then he took a deep breath and got back to work. There was still so much to do. 6 months had passed since Danny Cole became the first human ambassador to the throne. In that time, he had learned more than he ever thought possible. He had brokered trade agreements, settled disputes, and helped build bridges between two civilizations that had once viewed each other with suspicion. But he had not forgotten that he was a soldier first. When the fleet appeared on the edge of space, Danny was in the palace gardens, reviewing reports from Earth's military command. The alarms began wailing like dying animals, and the crystal walls of the palace flashed red. He was on his feet immediately, running toward the command center. They had brought everything they had. Thousands of ships, carrying millions of warriors, all aimed at one target. They knew that the alliance between humans and was growing stronger every day. They knew that if they waited any longer, they would face an enemy that could not be defeated. So they had decided to end it now. Danny found Empress in the command center, surrounded by her generals. Holographic displays showed the approaching fleet, a swarm of green dots that seemed to fill the entire screen. "How long until they reach us?" Danny asked. 6 hours, Commander replied grimly. "Our fleet is mobilizing, but we are outnumbered 3-1. The human ships are on their way, but they will not arrive in time for the initial battle." Danny studied the display. His mind, trained by years of combat medicine, was already calculating casualties. Thousands would die today, maybe millions. "We need to buy time," he said. "Keep them busy until reinforcements arrive." "That is the plan," said. "But even so, many of our warriors will fall. They are desperate. They will fight with everything they have." Empress had been silent, watching the approaching fleet with calm silver eyes. Now she spoke. "I will go to the surface," she said. "To the defense lines. My people need to see me standing with them." The generals erupted in protest. It was too dangerous. The Empress was too important. She should stay in the command center where she was safe. Raised a hand and they fell silent. "I told Danny Cole once that a queen who hides behind walls while her people die is not a queen worth following. I meant those words then, and I mean them now." She turned to Danny. "Will you come with me?" Danny did not hesitate. "Of course." They descended to the surface in a small transport ship. From the air, Danny could see the city spreading below them, beautiful towers of crystal and light. Millions lived down there. Families, children, people who had never seen war and hoped they never would. Today that hope would be tested. The defense lines were set up on the outskirts of the capital city. Thousands of warriors stood ready, their curved blades gleaming in the fading light. Human soldiers were there too, a contingent of Marines who had been stationed as part of the alliance. Danny saw familiar faces among them. Pete was there, his shoulder fully healed now, leading a squad of. Price was setting up a field hospital, preparing for the wounded that would soon come. When the Empress appeared among the soldiers, a wave of shock passed through the ranks. She walked calmly to the front lines, Danny at her side, and looked out at the sky where the enemy ships were beginning to appear. "My people," she said, her voice carried by speakers to every soldier on the line. "Today we face our greatest enemy. They come not just to conquer us, but to destroy everything we have built. They want to break the alliance that has given us hope. They want to prove that humans and cannot stand together." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But they are wrong. Look around you. Human and standing side by side, different in so many ways and yet united by a common purpose. This is what they fear. This is what they have come to destroy. And this is what we will defend with our lives." The first landing craft began to descend. Danny checked his rifle, the same weapon he had carried on 7 all those months ago. His hands were steady. His heart was calm. "You should find cover," he told the Empress. "The battle is about to start." Smiled, that same radiant smile he had seen when she first agreed to make him an ambassador. "You taught me something, Danny Cole. That courage is not the absence of fragility. It is action in spite of it." She drew a slender blade from her belt, a weapon of ancient design. "Today I will stand with my people, and I will fight." The battle began. It was chaos. Pure, terrible chaos. Warriors poured from their landing craft, waves of bodies with gleaming claws and burning eyes. The defense lines held it first, human rifles and blades working together to cut down the attackers. But they kept coming. For every one that fell, 3 more took its place. Danny moved through the battle like a ghost. When soldiers fell wounded, he was there to drag them to safety. When the line threatened to break, he was there to fill the gap. He fired his rifle until it ran dry, then picked up a fallen blade and kept fighting. The Empress fought beside him. She was graceful and deadly, her blade a silver flash in the darkness. But Danny saw the strain on her face, saw the moment when a claw caught her arm and sent blue blood spilling down her sleeve. He was at her side instantly, pulling her behind cover, pressing a bandage against the wound. "Hold on," he said, the same words he had spoken on that battlefield so long ago. "I am going to help you." She laughed despite the pain. "You are always helping me, Danny Cole." "That is my job," he said. "That is all I know how to do." Above them the sky suddenly filled with new lights. Ships were arriving, hundreds of them pouring out of space like a river of stars. Earth ships, human reinforcements arriving at last. The tide of battle began to turn. It took another 5 hours to defeat the fleet. When it was over, the enemy was broken, their ships scattered, their dreams of conquest shattered. The alliance had held. Danny stood in the ruins of the battlefield, the Empress beside him, both of them covered in blood and ash. Around them, human and soldiers cheered together, their voices rising to the stars. "We did it," Danny said quietly. "Yes," the Empress agreed, "we did." She turned to look at him, her silver eyes soft in the light of the burning wreckage. "A long time ago you stopped a stranger's bleeding on a forgotten battlefield. You did not know who I was, you did not care, you just saw someone hurt and decided to help." She placed her hand on his cheek, the same gesture she had made when she first woke after he saved her life. "That is what humanity is, Danny Cole. That is what you have shown my people. Not strength or power or intelligence. Compassion. The willingness to run toward danger for the sake of others." Danny smiled, exhausted but content. "I am just a medic," he said. "That is all I have ever been." "No," the Empress said. "You are much more than that. You are the bridge between our worlds. You are the proof that humans can stand together. You are my champion." She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his forehead, a gesture of honor among her people. "And you are my friend." As the sun rose over Danny Cole looked out at the future he had helped to build. 2 civilizations, once strangers, now united. A galaxy that would never be the same. All because a medic had stopped to help a wounded stranger. That was enough. That was everything.